Hi, I'm Paul Brody. In my shop, Mitch behind the cameras. And it's bike show time. I am surrounded by bicycles here. This is a part of my bicycle collection. Mitch and I like coffees. If you buy us coffees, much appreciated. Watch the video, how we made a small fortune. I think you'll like that. I'm going to go through each bike a little bit, one by one. The extended version gets more of the information, and the bike, if you're at the bike show in Vancouver this weekend, 15th and 16th, be happy to see you there. We're going to start with EB. What does EB mean? EB is short for electric bicycle. So I made up a name, EB, during the show because I was teaching Frame Building 101, and there was only two bikes down there. There was EB and a cargo bike, electric. No other electric bikes, and people largely ignored EB. Wasn't happy about that, but whatever. And the next year we went down to NABS. There was e-bikes everywhere. They had a stand, 3 bikes high, huge length, lots of bikes. So as in anything, it's timing. You got to get the timing right. EB was probably 1 year too early. So anyway, this is EB. This is the Wasn't. Of all the bikes here, this is the earliest one. I made this back in 1988, maybe 87, 88. This is number 468. And I got inspired by Richard Cunningham's, I think it's XCR. He had a composite frame, not quite like this, but aluminum and steel on the back. So I made the bike, and it was a lot of work. And when I made it, I thought there's no way we're going to have a model like this. So I phoned up the museum down in California, the Mountain Bike Museum, and asked them if they would like a bike. And they said yes. So the bike got sent down there. And then I never saw it until 2016. And then I realized that I had actually named it the Wasn't. And the reason I named it the Wasn't, I believe, is because it was not going to be a model because it was way too much work. So that's kind of the brief history. We also have a video on the Wasn't. You could watch that too. I wanted a gravel bike because it was all over. Everyone had a gravel bike and that. So I wanted to make something, and I didn't want a suspension fork, so I made a unifork. Got nice Hope brakes on it. I'm really happy with the mounting system that I came up with. And I got some nice parts on this bike. I got carbon rims, carbon cranks, carbon bar. And the paint job, a splatter. I kind of like that. It's a combination of 2 different kinds of paint. It's a matrix base coat, clear coat for the orange, and then an Imron clear coat. It's a nice combination because it really pops. I like this bike. 2015, maybe 17, something like that. It was made in London in 1894, and at the time in London, it was cool to have a hedge for a little bit of privacy. When you rode a giraffe bike, because you were up higher, you could look over your neighbor's hedge. So in a sense, it was the original Peeping Tom bike. And apparently it rode quite well. And because your feet were up high, if there was a lot of mud and stuff, because back in those days the roads weren't great, you tended to stay a little bit drier. 1888 Whippet. I saw this in a book. It's Bicycles and Tricycles, and there it is, right there. And I became fascinated by it, and I kept looking at it. I was teaching Frame Building 101, and every time the students showed up for class, they had a project, and I wanted to say that I had a project too. So I decided to build the bike. And I started, and at first I thought I'd make a black bike, Shimano parts. I knew nothing about this bike, and then someone said Ottawa Science. They did have one upstairs, and someone took photos, and that's when I realized how elegant and sophisticated it was. So I realized I had to do it some justice. So I set upon making this bike, and the university said they would sponsor me to go down to NABS, the big bicycle show. So that's kind of the story. Went down there and won People's Choice. That was a very nice award for first time at the show. This is the 69er. We did a video on this years ago. It's our most watched video, 400 and something thousand views. So back in 1997, I moved onto the property here, and the house was in terrible shape, and my friend Richard Parker, he was working for a construction company, still the same company he works for now, and he was known for me, Mr. Rip and Tear. They fix leaky condos. So we did a deal. I would build him the frame and the swing arm, and however long it took, he would do the same amount of work on my house. So it was a good deal. It was a one-for-one trade, and this took me 100 hours, and he spent 100 hours working on my house. And then I named the bike. It has a head angle of 69 degrees, so it became known as the 69er. And how the bike came about, Richard saw in a magazine in 1997 a bike with a Nexus hub up high, and it had a linkage. And we only just found out what that was because I never actually saw that magazine. It was a GT. I think it was a prototype Nexus hub, and you can see in the photograph that they got the disc brake on the right like it is here as well. So that's basically the story, and then he sold it, it got sold again, and then I chased it down. It took me 2 years to find this, and then I had to restore it. So there's a story, of course. Libido, these were made in about 1995, and at that time, suspension was really starting to boom, and we had a distributor at the time, and they were putting, I felt pressure, let's put it that way. I felt the pressure that I had to come up with a suspension bike. So I wanted something that was pretty simple, so a single pivot right here. And I put some research into where the pivot was, because anti-squat, all that stuff. We made about 75 of these bikes, and I came up with the name. I thought it was a good name because it's a kind of energy. We made small, medium, large. In total, we made 75 of these, and I was hesitant to make them because I knew that it was so hard to make money making a regular frame. To make something like this with linkages, shock, and all that, I thought we would never make any money, and I was 100% correct there. But anyway, I haven't seen one ever come back broken, so I'm pretty proud of that. I'm standing right beside my Romax, and we built this bike. I built this bike in 2020. That's when COVID hit. That's when we started our YouTube channel, Mitch and I. So this was an early project, and it's all documented on our videos. And it's Tangate tubing and a fillet braze fork. I made custom U-brakes, and very happy with this bike. And the name Romax. So I was building frames. I took off on my own. I used to work at Rocky Mountain, and then in '86 in May, I took off and I started Brody Bikes, and then this is one of the first frame models that we made. I woke up in the middle of the night and I had Romax on my brain, and I had a pen and paper for some reason, or I found a pen and paper, I wrote it down, and then in the morning when I woke up, I still liked it. So it became a model name. Romax, what does it mean? It doesn't mean anything at all. I just like the name. This is my shaft drive bike, and I had wanted to build a shaft drive bike for a while. I don't know how long now. So I got in touch with Ride On Cycles in Vancouver on Broadway, and they get a lot of donations of bikes. People show up and they have a bike or bikes that they don't want, and then often once a year or twice a year, a lot of them go into a container and go to a third world country. So that's a great thing to do. Anyway, he had 3 shaft drive bikes, and the photo you see is what I got. I got the Pink Ladies bike. I guess not many people wanted it, so I used this part of it. And you can see in the other photo, I'm working on the drawing. I'm building up the bottom bracket and figuring out the angle and how it's all going to work and get integrated into the frame. So it was a good project. We went down to NABS. That was 2014, and I thought it was a good-looking bike. Most people didn't realize that it didn't have a chain. You had to point it out to them. You'd go, look, no chain. And I'd tell people that I got rubber bands inside here so that when you turn the pedals, the rubber bands, I made up stories to try and get people's imagination working, but basically there wasn't a lot of interest. But I like the bike, and I'm glad that I built it. This is my city bike. I used to call it a touring bike, but then I went down to NABS in 2014 and ended up getting a prize for the city bike, so now it's known as the city bike. And for a while I didn't have it painted because I hadn't figured out the cable routing after I first made the bike, so I just had the cables held on with, I think, electrical tape, and the frame was bare, and because I've been riding it, it was starting to rust a little bit, and if you looked at the bike, it didn't look like anything at all. People ignored it because it didn't look like anything. It shows you what a coat of paint can do. So it's PPG blue, and the cream is Imron, and then Imron clear coat over the whole thing. I made custom racks. These were bent on a CNC bender. It's chromoly, 1/2 inch, I believe, and Hope brakes, roll-off hub. And it was nice to win a prize down at NABS. All right, the bike show is on Saturday, starts on Saturday, and that's when this video comes out. That'll be June 15th. Hope to see you down there. Mitch and I like coffees. If you buy us coffees, much appreciated. Helps the channel to grow. Please like, subscribe, tell your friends. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed this. See you next time.